Hi, good morning, Eastvale. My name is Molly Corton, and I'm the city's communications officer. And today I am so excited to be joined by a council member in the city of Eastvale, Jocelyn Yow. So I will let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Thank you, Molly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Yow. I am a council member here in the city of Eastvale. My family moved here in 2011, and we immediately fell in love with this city. And I decided to run for city council in 2018. And then I decided to run again for re-election just recently in 2022. And so it's been 5 to 6 years now that I'm on council, and I have a little one. He's 3.5 years old, and we are here in the city of Eastvale. And thank you again, Molly, for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you accommodating and finally making it on the podcast. It's super exciting. So I want to start by asking you some fun questions so the community can get to know the fun side of you. Okay, so I know I didn't prep you with these, but they're fun. So what is a book, movie, or TV show that you could like watch or rewatch over and over again without getting tired of it?
Oof. Well, I love reading. I actually have a whole bookshelf and with tons of books. I don't know if I would say I'm actually not a big fan of rereading books per se. I love learning about new things, getting to know new authors. And so I don't really reread any of the books, but I do love reading. And if anyone has any good book recommendation, feel free to send them to me.
Okay, I'm so glad to know you love reading. I love reading too.
Yeah.
And I always talk to everyone at the city about reading, and they're like, I don't read, Molly.
What kind of genre what kind of books?
I read, so I only used to read nonfiction. That was like the only thing I ever read. And then everyone was like, just try some fiction. And I was like, okay, so maybe like 6 months ago, I started reading fiction, and now I really like it also.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of do like a little bit of everything. So what do you read?
So both. So if I have some time, because the problem about me when it comes to reading is that for nonfiction, I have no problem just taking breaks, reading like one chapter at a time. That's fine. It's actually perfect for my schedule. But the problem is with fiction.
Yeah, you can't put it down.
Once I start reading fiction novel, that's it. Like I need to block off the whole day and just so that I can finish the book. And in fact, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, my parents, it's funny, parents, when you're a teenager, usually they're like, they're trying to get you to behave, to try to get you to read more. Mine was actually my parents were trying to get me to sleep, because once I start reading a book, a novel, especially, I would not stop until I finished reading them. And so, I barely slept when I was little because of that. And so, that's the problem with fiction, is that once I start reading them, I can't put them down. But on the other hand, for nonfiction, it's good in a sense that it fits into my schedule. I can read one chapter at a time, a few pages, or, just sections at a time instead of all at once.
Yeah, I have noticed that too, because when I was reading nonfiction, so I'll usually read nonfiction at if it's like my lunch break or I just have a short time. And that was so easy. I'd get through books in maybe a month. Then when I started reading fiction, now I'm reading way more than I used to read, because literally last night, I'm like, okay, I got home. I'm like, I'll just read a little bit, and then I'll clean up. I'll make dinner. No, I literally read for 4 hours, and then I was like, now it's time to go to bed. So I totally get that. So it's a blessing and a curse. But
it is.
I'm glad to know you read. We can talk about some book facts sometime.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. Can you share a talent or skill that you other people might be surprised that you have this?
Yeah, well, I surf, which not a whole lot of people know about. I usually go to Doheny and Dana Point. That's where I go surfing. I wouldn't say I'm really good at it, so please don't come to me for advice or anything like that, because it really varies. It depends on the waves, the condition. It's a whole host of things, and Mother Nature, she's gonna do whatever she wants to, right? And so, but I do enjoy surfing. That's what I usually do if I have some free time. But that's what I like to do.
That is a hidden talent. I wouldn't think that.
In fact, 2 months ago, during the month of January, it was right in the middle of winter, and I was at the city hall, and a constituent came in, and she recognized me, and she was like, Jocelyn. you look tan. What have you been up to? And I was like, yeah, that's because I go surfing. So, yep, that's that is something that I do whenever I have some free time. Surfing.
That's exciting. Hopefully, too many people don't ask you for lessons now, but might start happening. So, okay, so last Good to Know You. What's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
It's okay to make mistake. I think, because I was raised with certain standards, which is great, and I'm such a perfectionist myself. It's not just my parents. I'm a total perfectionist, and I think because of that, sometimes it holds me back. Like sometimes I'll be like, I'm too afraid to commit to something or to make a decision on something because I'm like, well, what if it doesn't work out? But as I get a little bit older, and especially now that I have kids, I realize there's joy in making mistakes and seeing kids, especially seeing Kaden, making mistakes, learning along the way, and I realized that's how we learn, right? Like sometimes we just gotta take that leap of faith, and even though you might not succeed at the end, but it's really the journey that counts. I know, as cliche as it sounds, but that's what I would tell my younger self is don't be afraid to make mistakes, and it's okay if things don't work out, right?
Yeah, no, I like that. I think it's good too because we just had the Kiwanis on and they were talking. We're going to title the episode there's life after high school or something, because that's what they were saying of when you're in school, you feel like everything is the end of the world.
Yes.
And and something small happens and you're like, how am I going to recover? And then you realize you get to the next school year, you graduate and you're like, okay, that wasn't even important anymore. Yeah. So I feel like it's a good learning lesson for everyone. It is cliche, I guess, but it's not, because everyone needs to know one little thing happens and whatever, you keep it moving, you learn, absolutely. You grow. And so
one bee is not going to kill you.
Yes, no. And I feel even too, I started at the city very young. I was only 21 when I started too. So there were so many things that I would mess up on. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting fired for sure. And everyone was like, yeah, we don't care, because it's not the end of the world. We're just people. Yeah. So, well, thank you for letting us get to know you. So I'm going to jump into the hard stuff now. So you were elected to the council when you were 23, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then at 25, you became the youngest woman of color mayor in California. So can you kind of talk to me about what was your thought process with running in the first place? And then now you've been on the council for several years, you ran again. Can you just explain where was your head at when you first ran, and then with re-election also?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to run for office when I was, I want to say maybe 18 years old. I didn't grow up in a political family. My parents knew, they knew nothing about politics. Absolutely nothing. My mom is from Vietnam. She came here as a refugee. My dad is an immigrant from Malaysia. And so, politics, it's not something that we talk about. In fact, I remember when I was in college, I would go to some of my friends' house and they would talk about politics at the dining table while having dinner. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is so scary. Yeah. What are you guys talking about? Can we talk about something else? Isn't there a rule where, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics at the dining table? But yeah, so that was my family, never talk about politics. But what changed for me was, I went to Norco College, and I started at Norco College when I was 17, right when I turned 17. And I started in winter of 2012. So it was January 2012. Okay. It was right after recession. And we were still community colleges across the country and here in California, including Norco College. We were still recovering from the recession. And so we had severe budget cut. There were barely any classes. And so I had a plan. I went in there first day. I knew exactly what I had to do. So I had a plan. I needed to get out of there, transfer out by 2 years, the latest 2.5 years. I'm always someone with a plan. If plan A doesn't work, I have plan B, plan C, all the way to plan Z. And so I knew that I needed to transfer. The problem was there wasn't a whole lot of classes. And so I started looking into Riverside City College because they're sister colleges and within the same network. And I realized they had a tad bit more classes. And so what I ended up doing was that in spring, I was commuting to Riverside City College, but I didn't have a car back then. I was 17, had just moved back. And so I would rely on Riverside Transit Agency. So I would take the bus. Yeah, okay. So I had to take the bus from Norco to Riverside. And if any one of you have actually taken buses in this area, it's a little bit challenging to say the least. And so it took me 2 hours just to take the bus from Norco all the way to RCC. Yeah. And then
it's like half your day.
Yes.
Like by the time you do the round trip.
Yeah, exactly. So by the time you're done with round trip, that's 4 hours. And then on top of that, if you're like me, I live 45 minutes away from the bus stop, 45 minutes walking time. Okay. So yeah, it took me 45 minutes to walk to the bus stop, 2-hour bus ride, and then take one class and then do that again, take the bus ride home, and then walk back home.
So like your whole day is taken up by this one class.
Yes. So I had to wake up at 4 a.m. That was my life.
Oh my gosh, for one class. That's
yes, for one class. And I remember it was an English class, actually. I was like, you need to get your English, math, certain classes out of the way first. And so I did that. And then it was fine at first, whatever. Got to do what you got to do, right? Mm-hmm. And then came April, I remember it was raining, it was pouring hard. Yeah, and so I was waiting for the bus on Pat's Ranch Road in Miraloma. And I thought to myself, I was like, there gotta be a better way of doing this, right? And so I got on the bus. Well, I had like almost 2 hours to kill. And so I started looking into, like how this works, like how does the school works, how does funding works, how does the bus system works, like how everything works. And that's when I learned you have your school board members, you have your board of trustees for Riverside Community College District, you have your local city council members, and then for Riverside Transit Agency, there's also a board of directors. And so that's when I learned about the whole thing in 2 hours, the political system of our daily lives. And because everyone knows about the president, everyone knows about Congress, right?
Of course.
And U.S. senators. Like people know about federal government, but people don't realize there's so many layers to local politics. And that was when I told myself, I was like, I'm going to come back home. I'm going to transfer. I'm going to stick to my plan. I'm going to transfer to Berkeley. And when I come back, I'm going to run for office. So that was when I knew, 17, 18. I guess that was 17. And so that was the plan. And that was exactly what I did. I transferred to Berkeley. And then when I came back home, I moved right back after Berkeley. And that was how I started getting involved in politics.
I love that. Yeah. That is such a good story. So I obviously work for the city. And I feel like I had a really different story because my family was very political, like always talking about politics. Like that was all everyone would talk about, and everyone would complain about everything. And then, as you're getting older, then you start getting into the grown-up conversations. You're complaining, and then I remember someone saying something to me like, instead of like just complaining, why don't you do something about it? And I was like, I'm gonna. Like that's such a and that was kind of like the light bulb in my head of like, fine, that's what I'm gonna do. And so I went to school as like a poli-sci student and was like, I want to work for the government, but it was sort of like. That was all they talked about, but it was, like talk is cheap. Like you had to do something about it. You had to get out there. So I love that we're just like sitting on the bus and, we're like, I'm going to do this. So I kind of want to lead into the next question. This is perfect because now you're on a lot of different like commissions and committees and different things for the city. But one of them I know is like Riverside Transit Agency now. Yeah. So I was going to ask, what are you most passionate about? But I feel like that's an obvious answer. But do you want to talk about maybe some of those commissions, committees, and still, maybe what are you most passionate about and why?
Yeah. So all council members, we serve on different regional committees, some local committees. So I serve on, I hope I got all of them. So I serve on Eastvale school committees where we meet with all the school principals, that includes elementary school principals, our intermediate school principals, and also Roosevelt and East End. We meet with them I want to say every 3 months or so. It is open to the public, which you should come and stop by. And then I also serve on Community Services Ad Hoc Committee And then I also serve on Western Regional Conservation Agency. It's a really long name, something like that. And then, yes, so you also mentioned Riverside Transit Agency. I've been on there since day one. Yeah, since day one on council. In fact, when I got on council, that was the one committee I was like, I need to get on that. I had to get on that. Yes. I had to get on that committee. And back then it was then Councilmember Brendan Plott was who was serving on that committee, but he was graciously enough to have me serve as his alternate. So whenever he couldn't make it, I would be the one attending the meetings. And then even then, sometimes he would just bring me along. And so that was how I got on RTA. And then when he chose not to run for re-election again, I was like, yes, that's me. Like, I'm taking that committee. And so I got moved up, and I ever since then I've been serving as the primary point of contact, I guess, from the city of Eastvale on Riverside Transit Agency. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. There's obviously, with the pandemic, 2020, things did change a little bit. So both Councilmember Brendan Plott and I, we were able to successfully secure an additional bus route here in the city of Eastvale. So for those of you who may not know this, but here in the city of Eastvale, there's only one bus route serving the entire city, and that's bus route 3, which is what I used to take. So 3 goes from Amazon Center all the way to Corona, and it passes by Norco College. So that was what I used to do. So from back then, we didn't have Amazon. It would stop at Target area. And so from there, it goes to the city of Norco, and then the final stop is in Corona. And so that's the only bus route that's truly serving the city of Eastvale. And we were able to successfully advocate for an additional bus route here in the city. And it was ready to go. Like, we were really excited for it. But unfortunately, COVID happened. And so we had to put that on pause. With that being said, now that things are slowly, opening up again, and we're returning to normalcy, we're looking, especially with the new downtown Eastvale, there's going to be a lot of traffic that's going into that area, like the whole Limonite area. And so something that we're considering at RTA and at the city is, what if it's not, because we know that the traditional bus route, the ones that we have right now, it's not very effective. It takes a really long time to get from point A to point B. And then plus, some people like me, for instance, I live 45 minutes away from the bus stop, which is really far. Yeah. And so we're looking into other options. And one of the options that we're examining at this point of time is, why am I blanking out? What is it called?
Microtransit?
Microtransit. Okay. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So we're looking into microtransit. So the difference between microtransit and a traditional bus route is that microtransit, you can request for a ride through an app, or you can do it. You can call RTA as well, or you can just download the app, and then you can request for a ride. Let's say, I need to go to Norco College tomorrow and I want to leave my house at 1:30 p.m. So you put in that information, let them know where your destination is and what time you want to head out. And the bus will pick you up from the closest major intersection near your house, and at that time frame, plus minus 10 minutes or so. And then the bus drops you off right at your destination. So instead of, the traditional bus route where there's certain routes, certain bus stops, and the bus just sticks to that and they don't go anywhere else, we're changing that. And we might, with this new system, hopefully it will be more effective and more rider friendly. So that's what we're looking at. In fact, next month I'm going out to Hammett and San Jacinto. They have microtransit. I think they have had it for a little bit over a year now. So I'm actually going to go out there, try it out myself, because I've only read about it and learned about it, but I haven't had the experience of riding a microtransit myself. And so I'm actually going to do that next month. And yeah, I'm very excited for that. And is it okay if I share the survey result?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So here in the city of Eastvale, last year, I want to say around October, city staff did a survey asking our current residents, how many of you are taking buses on a regular basis? And I believe only 3 out of 80 people said yes, which is not surprising. It's not, if you actually take a look at the bus, there's not a whole lot of people taking the buses. And we know that at RTA. But then we ask the question of, if we were to introduce microtransit and we explain, what that looked like, how many people would actually take the bus on a regular basis? And I believe it was around 80 to 85% of people said, yes, they will take it. And which is really high. We went from 3 people to, 80 to 85% of people saying yes. And when we asked, what would folks take it for? What's the purpose of taking, buses? And most of the respondents who said yes, they will take microtransit, they said they would use it for school, to go to school. And so we know we don't have school buses here in the city of Eastvale, and traffic, drop off, pick up, it's always a nightmare. And also the thing is, a lot of parents work, both parents work. Definitely. And so, there's definitely a demand. And so we're looking into it.
Yeah. Well, I really hope we get microtransit. I think it would be so awesome. Obviously a big win for 17-year-old you, for sure.
Absolutely.
But also I know that there are kids who do take the bus to go to school, because there's kids who not everyone here goes to ERHS. So I have met multiple kids that say they take the bus. Not every resident obviously filled out the survey, but I think it would be so awesome for, school congestion and different things. And then even to go to downtown, even elderly, some people can't drive.
Absolutely.
So that would be really cool.
No, in fact, my brother went to JFK and he took that bus. Yeah, he took the bus to go to JFK, and then I took the bus to go to Norco College. And yes, there's for those who do not know, there's actually a bus stop right outside Roosevelt right now. So, that is also an option. And students ride free. So students get to ride RTA for free.
Yes, definitely. So, okay, perfect. So I want to segue. I know you've been here in the city for a long time, and you went to college, but then you came back, of course, and now you're here. So can you talk about how you have seen the city evolve? What has been really exciting for you? What have maybe you been maybe you didn't like it at first, and then now you're oh, I like it now, or just what's your thoughts on the evolution of the city?
Well, the smell was gone, or almost gone.
Yes.
I remember the smell was so strong. I mean, I can still smell it here and there, but it's definitely not what it used to be. I will say that. So when my family moved here in 2011, and to give you some context, I was born in the Bay Area. My family were in, we had a house in the Bay Area. And then when we moved away, I spent a few years in Malaysia. And so my parents sold their house in the Bay Area. And when we were ready to move back to the United States, we wanted to move to the Bay Area. That was the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the plan.
I don't want that.
Exactly. That was the plan, was to move back to the Bay Area. But housing price was just not it. It was very expensive. No, we couldn't afford living in the Bay Area. And so my parents were like, well, where are we going to go now? And we already had family members who live in Eastvale. And they were like, yeah, just come to Eastvale. It's a great community, and there's a local community college nearby, Norco College. And so that was how we got here. But what my parents didn't tell me was, they didn't say, back then also they said it was Corona. They didn't use the word Eastvale. But also they told me it was going to be near Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Which is not close to here.
Yeah. So, that was what happened to me. I was I'm moving here.
I'm going to LA.
Yes. I told everyone.
Like in the movies too, when you're young, you think it's the movies. And it's like Hollywood Boulevard.
Yep. That was exactly what I had in mind. And then in fact, back then, Facebook was a big thing. And I remember updating my status. I was like, moving to Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everyone's and then you moved to Smelly Cow Eastvale.
And then I remember getting off LAX, and it was such a long drive. And I got off at night too. And it was such a long drive. And I was like, are we there yet?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I remember getting off the 71 freeway, and I was like, what is this smell?
You're like, where
Oh my goodness, where am I? And then I remember also how quiet it was my first night here. it was so quiet and I couldn't sleep because of jet lag. And I remember just how quiet everything was. Like it was almost like scary for me. But yeah, and then I started school right away because we moved back in December of 2011, and then I started school a few weeks after. And yeah, I just like immediately like I did fall in love with the city right away. I did. The only thing that was really, you know, I fell in love with the city. The only thing was when I went to college, I was thinking, well, what am I gonna do out there?
Yeah,
like
for
there's
jobs.
no jobs. Yeah, that was
totally.
what I was thinking was, you know, like what am I going to do out there? There's no jobs. And so it was really hard. And as I remember looking at all the jobs postings, a lot of the jobs were, you know, in like the city. Like the closest ones that I was able to find was like in Los Angeles. And even then that was far. And so my first job, I actually worked in the city of Cerritos, like, which is close to Los Angeles. And I thought I could do it. I was like, oh, this is not bad, you know, like.
But it weighs on you.
Oh my goodness.
It weighs on you.
2.5 hour drive every day.
Oh no.
Yeah. And like, no, I couldn't do it. I actually left that job after 6-7 months. I was only there for not even a whole year. But yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. And so I started looking for hybrid jobs. And that's when I was like, okay, like I could do this. Like maybe spend half of my time at home, half of the time at work. And then now remote jobs. Yeah. Especially with the pandemic, a lot more jobs are remote now. And so that helps a lot because that's what I do now. It's like what I do mostly, it's remote. But that is something that, you know, it's still an issue for a lot of our residents. And I see that a lot of the youth, a lot of my friends whom I went to college with, they don't come back because there's no jobs out here, right?
It's totally hard.
And so it is something that we need to think about. We need to strategize. How can we retain the talent here in the region? How can we keep, you know, how can we keep the talent here? Because we have so much talent, We do. We have so much. And it's hard. They go elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, I have a similar story because I grew up in Lake Arrowhead, like up in the mountains. And I loved it up there because it's beautiful. Yeah. It's so calm. There's no freeways. Like I never even really drove on a freeway till I went to college, which is so crazy. Just such a different life. And I always wanted to go back. And when I first graduated, I did go back for a few months and I was working here. I was like, I can commute, but the commute just like within like 3 months, like it killed me. And so obviously now I live down here. But it's hard because it's nice to have that like quaint, like community feeling like Eastvale or like Arrowhead or these other cities. But then also, you know, you have to be practical. Like it's not always practical to like work in those quaint areas. So now I live down here and I do like it down here, but it's definitely like an adjustment going from like the mountains where it's snowing most of the year and it's there's no freeways and it's calm to like, it's 1,010 degrees down here. But the city is so beautiful. Like it's so clean here. Everyone is so kind. I have worked for several cities at this point, and this is definitely like the most clean, well taken care of city. So if I had to leave the mountains, at least I'm in like in a good place for sure. So
that's true.
You know, but hopefully we'll work on the job thing. Yeah. And hopefully with downtown too, that will bring some new jobs and we'll be able to attract some people.
That's the whole.
Even when I was in college, I was a WRCOG fellow. Like I was doing the internship and the whole program is to like retain the talent. And so that was why I ended up staying here in the IE because I was like, there's nothing really here. And so I was going to leave. And then after, you know, going through that program, they were like showing so many job opportunities like in the IE to keep people here. And a lot of us that have gone through the program, like we're all still here in the region. So
yeah, and I think like you highlight one thing that's, you know, that's important is that I think it's also like knowing where to look for those jobs, right? Like they're not necessarily out and about. Yeah. And then, you know, it's important to know the right person and to look at the right place. And so yeah, like WRCOG, for instance, it's a good place to look at, right? But yeah, it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, totally. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, the reason that we kind of have the podcast is always to give people like a behind the scenes look at, you know, being a business owner, being a resident, being a council member. So is there anything that you'd want to share that, you know, like you encounter as a council member that maybe like the public wouldn't know, or something that you've encountered that, you know, this is like your platform to kind of give a behind the scenes look? Do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, well, I thought everyone knew this, but some people were surprised to learn about this. So I guess I'll share it with everyone, is that all council members actually live in the city of Eastvale.
Yes. Yes, not everyone knows that.
No, not everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was campaigning, they were like, well, where do you live? And I said, oh, I live, a few blocks away. And especially now that we have districts, so every council member lives in a different district. And so your council member is probably, I would say, like no more than 2 to 3 miles away from you. And so I would, when I was campaigning, I would tell people, oh yeah, like I live just a few blocks away, or like, in this neighborhood. They were like, oh, you live so close to us.
You're like, I have to.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, that's good. You live in the city. I'll definitely vote for you. And I was like, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, at the same time, all council members actually live in the city. Yeah. And so that first. And then second, we make $400 a month. And I think that's also something that people don't realize. We don't get paid. I don't even think that's necessarily a salary. I wouldn't call it a salary, but we don't really get paid to be on council. We get a stipend of $400 a month. And by the time you pay for tax and all that stuff, it's like really your take home is like $360. Yeah. And the gas and all that stuff. Right. So we get $400 a month. And then I would also say that one last thing that people always, they might not realize this, is that most of the council members have a full-time job outside of city council, right? Like we can't pay our bills with $400 a month. I can't even pay my gas with $400 a month. No. And so, we do have a full-time job outside of city council. So just know that if we take 24 hours instead of 2 hours to respond to your emails, it's probably because we're at work at our day job. But yeah, so we just ask for patience and a little bit of grace. But with that being said, I've been on the council for 6 years now, and I know that all of us truly have the community's interests at heart. Like we want to serve the community. And we definitely did not sign this up for the pay, not for $400. And we're doing this because we care about the city. And many of us have kids, and we want to leave this city at a better place than how we found it, especially for the next generation, for our kids.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a privilege to have you on the podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed and they continue to tune in. So we will see you guys next time. But thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.